Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
This is Chapter 5, Your Father. I'm just going to knock, Chara said slowly. It's not a big deal.
That sounds like it.
They stood right by the door as they had for about a minute now, their hand no closer to knocking than they had when they had first climbed up the steps. Like getting out of bed this morning, the proposition had been easier said than done. Do it, coward, Frisk replied. Excuse me, since when do I share a head with Undine? Ever since you started alphasing out over knocking on a door. If you compare me to that MMKC2 hater again, I will find a way to end you, so help me.
What?
Ooh, bold words for somebody who's been freaking out over knocking on their dad's door. Frisk's tone became somehow even more aggressively insistent. Come on, Chara, you can do this. Chara scrunched up their face in annoyance, but while they refused to admit it, Frisk's obnoxiousness had put this into perspective. This wasn't a big deal. Frisk himself had visited Asgore a few times since leaving the underground, and while they never stayed long, this was nothing Chara hadn't experienced before. They were being ridiculous. With a deep breath, they knocked on the door, surprised to almost immediately hear a warm, booming voice sounding from within. Howdy! You may come in if you like. Otherwise, I'll be with you in just a moment. Their smile tugged at their face, completely sincere. He had always been the sort to just invite anyone into his home without question. The door was characteristically unlocked, and they walked right in. Even after they'd both picked out new homes, somehow Asgore and Toriel had independently picked houses that were almost identical. Chara could believe they were in the same house they'd woken up in this morning if it weren't for the atmosphere. Instead of low-maintenance decorations and the strong smell of baking, there were living flowers lining every available space, and the air was filled with an earthy scent. They could feel Frisk slightly crinkling their shared nose at it, but Chara relished it. They didn't have much in their life to feel nostalgic about, but somehow that smell, those flowers, that happy humming voice, it brought them rushing back to far-off memories. Memories that made them want to laugh and to sob at the same time. Being a teenager, and a tough one at that, they fought back the slight pressure in their eyes. They knew Frisk was feeling the same physical sensation, but mercifully didn't remark on it. Chara took only a moment to wipe their eyes, trying to play it off as having gotten pollen in them before making a beeline for Dad. For Asgore. They didn't have the right to call him Dad anymore, not after what they had done to his life. It still didn't stop the name from springing to mind as soon as they laid eyes on him. Gone were the royal regalia, the flowing cape and the billowing robes. It wasn't the king of all monsters who greeted them. It was a massive fuzzy monster in overalls and dirty work gloves, looking startled to see the human before splitting into a wide but nervous smile. Ah, Frisk! This is a surprise, but I'm glad to see you. Can I help you? There was a stiff silence in the air for a moment. Asgore's eyes started to dart anxiously. It took that long for Chara to remember that they weren't a backseat driver waiting for Frisk to speak. They spoke hastily. No! Asgore's face fell. I mean... Chara took a deep breath. A couple of years spent without speaking to anyone but Frisk had taken a toll on their social skills. They felt a sense of encouragement from the back of their skull, and gratefully they kept on with more confidence. What I mean is that nothing is the matter. I came to visit. He looked surprised, but delighted. Truly? Yes, unless it's a bad time? Oh, no, he said hurriedly. It is never a bad time. I was simply doing some work in the garden, but I can stop for a cup of tea. That sounds nice, Chara said. Their smile itched a little as anxiety threatened to drive them away. They knew their behavior was unusual for Frisk, and despite the other humans' encouragement, not following Frisk's usual script was unexpectedly stressful. However, I was actually hoping to help you. If Asgore was smiling in delight before, he was beaming radiantly now. Is that so? You wish to garden with me? A bit of self-doubt returned to his expression, and he chortled nervously. Are you sure you don't have anything better to do than pluck weeds with an old boss monster? Chara smiled warmly, trying and failing not to fumble over their next words. I'm sure. Not that there literally is nothing else to do. What I mean, I would like to, like we used to, is what they didn't say. Fortunately, the happiness on Asgore's face told them that they didn't have to. I would also like that very much, Frisk. I will see if I have any smallish gloves anywhere. He did, which for a monster of his size still meant that the gloves were several sizes too big for them. But they didn't care. It felt wonderful just to get out into the garden again. It started with a tour of the garden, both outdoor and in the greenhouse Asgore had set up. He still mostly focused on flowers, but he had expanded to an extraordinary variety of them. Tropical, temperate, perennial, annual. If it was bright and cheery and could fit in a pot, he was doing his best to make it thrive there.
Like
He put
Flowey?
all of those in the same environment.
Flowey is bright and sort of cheery, and he fits in the pot.
Yeah, okay, so first of all, bright and cheery, that's
Well, he's
probably
brightly
not...
colored.
Okay,
And he
maybe.
has pictures. Anyway,
How he does it everywhere, I don't know. I assume he's got indoor, outdoor, he's got multiple greenhouses.
I suppose you can control temperature with multiple greenhouses, but
Probably.
like, if you're growing tropical plants and normal plants that would grow in that area, and assuming it's not a tropical
in the house, probably.
Yep.
Yeah, but like, oh well.
You probably just heat up. I don't know. I don't know
Flowers
nothing
usually
about
have
gardening.
Really different.
But I would
climates.
assume that you can make different environments.
If you have different spots and like
Yeah.
climate control in your greenhouse,
Sure.
if it's not just a
You just
greenhouse
launch
that you
some-
set up that should be warmer than outside.
Well, you just launch some fireballs around some of them for the tropical, and that's how gardening works.
But
Okay.
they probably
Yeah, just
need
take it from me.
hours of light and certain hours of time in the light and not in the
Maybe-
light. No, plants can't just have light 24 hours a day, and I doubt you can have
Maybe
fireballs that
set up-
turn on and off every 12 hours.
Maybe Asgore can set up some kind of spell or something that will make that happen.
Oh.
That's definitely how gardening works.
He
Yeah.
would just garden by growing the plants by magic.
No, but maybe he does make some kind of spell to produce extra heat for those that need it. Well,
Still.
I will let KoboldKing know that there are not enough footnotes to this chapter to explain the no, and so yeah, certain gardening questions have gone unanswered, and hopefully that has not ruined the immersion of this story.
Sure.
If it has, then we're in trouble. I'll have to avoid any gardening-based stories in the future.
So yeah, if he grew flowers, then he cool.
It'd be Gru Flowey.
Oh
He could maybe plant him and have a crop of flowers. As in golden flowers.
dear. They can all talk to you and all
Oh.
want to kill you, probably.
Wow.
They'll
don't think
just
he would
kill
grow.
each other. They'll just all kill each other.
There would be some problems. with
Can we
this.
please? Why did we say that really 20 times? Anyway,
Okay, well, that's a great story idea. I'm not opposed to one of you writing a story in which there's a greenhouse And then
these sprouts, there's like
tons
20
of monster ashes are sprinkled on the flowers, and all injected with determination. And now you have several abominations of fallen down monsters reincarnated as flowers,
Dear.
all
Well,
without
they're all
empathy and love and compassion and morality.
Couldn't you like?
All right. Wow. Okay. Where were we? Something to do with the greenhouse.
Greenhouse
The plants
tour.
were of a great variety.
Tour.
If it was bright and cheery and could fit in a pot, he was doing his best to make it thrive there. Chara was fascinated by each one, listening to him ramble on about each variety. He was just like Toriel when she got on an interesting subject, though it took a lot less to get her starting to talk. Asgore glowed with pride and excitement, which was a rare but dear sight. Despite all the new orchids and other exotic forms of flora he was growing now, there was a special area set aside for flowers near and dear to their heart. A broad patch of golden flowers. They found themselves standing there numbly for a time, staring at them with a fixed-on smile. "Ah," Asgore said softly. "You recognize these?"
Well, yeah.
Chara hesitated, declining to answer. Asgore didn't seem to mind. "Yes, these were the centerpiece of my garden in the underground, in my throne room. I grow them here for sentimental reasons." He shuffled, clearly uncomfortable. "I understand if they bring back bad memories. We can move on, or take a break." Chara laughed softly. They hadn't even started yet. "No, I am fine." They weren't. Far from it. Some ancient memories were still too fresh and too raw where these flowers were concerned. They could remember the cries of angry humans, of bullets tearing through his body, struggling to take control, screaming out for him to just fight back. It was kill or be killed. Didn't he know that? Hadn't they planned for that? The smile was starting to hurt. Sensing concern from Frisk and an uncertain look from Asgore, they shook themselves softly, pulling themselves back to the present as best they could. "As much as I love seeing all of this," they said slowly, "I would also like to help before the day is up." Asgore nodded thoughtfully, and with a smile he put them to work. He assigned only simple tasks, just some simple weeding and maintenance work, but the labor did them a world of good. Bad memories were all too easy to dredge up, but good memories took some effort.
Wait, if he's growing everything in pots, why do they need weeding?
Well, it doesn't say
Unless he
everything was in
also has-
pots.
Unless the pots are outside.
It said if it's bright and cheery and could fit in a pot, he was doing his best to make it thrive here. But that does not imply that everything he grew was in a pot. That's logic.
Still, also, if it's in a greenhouse, there's probably not going to be that many
If it's bright and
weeds.
cheery, then it was in a pot. If A, then B.
You can't say if B then A.
But you can't say if B, then A. Yeah.
If it did not fit in a pot, then
Yeah, if
I
it,
don't think.
then he's not growing it. That's not logical.
all
All right. Thank you, logic lessons.
Hey, I just wanted to know why you have to weed if it's either in a greenhouse.
You've got me.
That logic is
Denying the
it's-
antecedent?
No, it's not
Determining the
logic at
consequent.
all.
No?
No, you're saying
Oh boy.
if it could fit.
Okay, let's say.
If it could fit.
Let's park here for a minute. Sorry, KoboldKing.
No.
If it was bright and cheery and okay, you go for it.
I said if
Yep.
it was bright and cheery, then it could fit in a pot.
Okay.
Or no, if it was bright and cheery, then it could fit in a pot. Then he was letting it thrive. So
Maybe
it's
like
saying
him.
if
Okay, yeah.
That doesn't really.
But it
imply
doesn't
anything.
mean that
it doesn't mean that it's a logical
Isn't that the
fallacy
logical
or
fallacy of like
truth.
assuming the whole from the part or something?
No,
Like
that's not quite.
since all of the
That is not quite the hurtful fallacy. It's
I mean, if you go back,
But you are doing
it's logically correct, but not true.
for what, modus tollens?
Most tones is
well,
like
if you did
it's
it
not
backwards,
within that
if it thrived, then it fit in a pot, then it was bright and cheery. So
No,
that
what
would be
day.
logic.
Like if it.
Yeah, but I mean, the original statement was
If it
that
was bright and
you
cheery
said he was
and-
doing things only in pots.
Yeah, so if A and B, then C,
So if
and
not
then
C,
I'm
then not A or
saying
not B.
therefore B.
Well, I think the way you'd put it would be, if bright, cheery can fit in a pot, he's doing his best to make it thrive. But you can't say, if he's making it to thrive, then it's bright, cheery, and in a pot.
Yeah,
If A and B,
that's
then
affirming
C,
the
not
consequence.
if C, therefore B.
Wow.
Because it's not if A and B, if and only if A and B, then C. In that case, it would have to be B, which is fits in a pot. But it's not if and only if, so therefore it doesn't have to be in a pot. But I think we already knew that.
Logic intermission.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Okay.
I need to I should have made a timestamp note to say, please skip ahead 2 minutes if you don't want to hear logic. And let's just assume,
Like logic and or gardening.
Let's
Please
assume-
skip this.
let's just assume weeds exist and that Kara is helping to pull them out.
But if it's not in a greenhouse, then how does he control the temperature?
All right.
Because he grows
Yeah, but there's also stuff outside too. There you go.
I think this is.
All the plants have to be in the green.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Everything works.
The entire yard is
all
probably
consistent.
potting soil. So,
All right. Bad memories were all too easy to dredge up, but good memories took some effort. Fortunately, this was doing it. They used to play in a garden just like this and work on it with Dad all the time. The work would be monotonous to most, but Kara always enjoyed it. There was a simple pleasure in the slow, methodical progress of turning barren earth into something beautiful and organized. Asgore was working hard, easily outpacing them when it came to the actual usefulness of the labor, but he never rushed them. He just hummed happily, seeming as glad to share silent company as he had been to talk about his work. Kara shared the sentiment. Frisk was bored out of their mind. They didn't say a word, no doubt afraid of making Kara feel bad about their choices, but they could feel the other humans' distaste for the simple, repetitive work. They didn't let it bother them too much. They knew that stopping to appease Frisk was the last thing that Frisk wanted, even if they still couldn't quite understand why Frisk was so anxious to share. They still did the next best thing they could think of, starting an ongoing internal narration on everything they were doing. Narration about gardening, for the most part, was boring Frisk almost as much as the gardening itself, but Kara tried to make it as entertaining as possible. They knew the other humans' sense of humor pretty well by now, and sprinkled in puns and jokes on everything they could think of. The laughter in their head told them that it was working, and they could feel Frisk's appreciation, even if they didn't voice it. That was good enough for them. They lost track of time eventually, falling into a simple, pleasant rhythm until the sun had nearly set. Asgore broke their reverie with a surprised whistle. "Oh dear, the time, I'm afraid, has gotten away from us." He smiled apologetically. "I would never rush you out, but your mother will probably be worried if you delay much longer." Kara wiped some sweat off their brow, nodding in agreement. "You're right. I should head home." They hesitated, as had become a bad habit. This was fun. We should do this again sometime." Asgore beamed. "You are always welcome here, Frisk. You are fine company." Kara's smile was beginning to feel forced again, guilt and grief starting to hit hard. They tried to distract themselves by removing and folding their oversized gloves, but it was still there. They were still there. They had had this for real once. They had had a father who knew their own name, and they threw it away. For what? So they could die in vain with their best friend. so they could... To their surprise, they heard an incredibly loud sniff, looking up to find Asgore's face a complete mess of emotion. He was wiping tears from his eyes, not even bothering trying to hide it. Chara panicked. Did I do something wrong? I'm sorry. No, Asgore said quickly, an enormous hand fishing in his pockets for an equally huge handkerchief. No, you did nothing wrong. I am simply an old monster with many old memories, one who struggles not to see only what he wants to see. He blew his nose with the same force as an elephant might, taking a few steps away to seat himself on a bench. Chara was completely at a loss of what to say, but he continued, slowly and with more control. I am sure I have told you this before, child, but you often remind me of another human, one whose eyes shone with hope and determination as surely as yours. I see them in you every time we meet, but somehow, today, it is almost like looking at an old photo. Asgore shook his head hanging down and staring at the soil. But when he looked up at them again, it was with a bizarrely hopeful expression. He was looking at them like he had on their deathbed. I almost wish to ask you if you remember this, he went on, his deep voice as quiet as distant thunder. Though it is impossible, I still believe, however, in what your determination can accomplish. And so, I find myself asking a question that may make no sense to you. He took a deep breath. Chara stood paralyzed in fright. Are you there? Asgore asked quietly. Frisk? Is someone with you?
Wow.
Well,
These people are like big brains.
They were terrified. He knew. He knew. He had half convinced himself it wasn't real, but he had seen and he knew. With a sick certainty, Chara realized that Toriel undoubtedly was the same way, seeing but disbelieving. Their own voice was thick. They could force themselves to speak only by sheer force of will. They felt a curiosity coming from Frisk, as though they weren't sure how Chara would approach this. It was mixed with a sense of encouragement. I can't, Frisk, they mumbled in their head. I have no idea what you're talking about, they mumbled out loud. Asgore looked as though the lie felt like the slash of a knife. I'm sorry, Chara finished, to both their father and to Frisk. I can't. I just can't. Frisk was quiet. Asgore's eyes held a distinctly miserable look. He looked pitifully and nodded. Ah, so that is how it is. Of course. Here I am, spoiling everything, Asgore said. There was still the tension in the air of words unsaid, and his eyes flitted back down to the earth. Hurry home, then, child. Don't let the ramblings of a tired old monster dampen a good day. Chara wanted so badly to take back the lie, but couldn't force themselves to do it. It was just too much. Not today. Not when they could barely choose what to wear without second-guessing their every action. They could feel a somber sensation from Frisk, which made them feel all the worse. Their disappointment was merely the natural consequence to Chara's cowardice, but it hurt all the same. With wary steps, they began to walk away. "Hug him," Frisk said with a sudden tone of command. Chara jumped before vigorously shaking their head. Asgore was far too wrapped up in his memories to notice. "What? I can't do that. It doesn't matter. I would hug him right now, so you should too." "I can't, Frisk. We're tired, we're sweaty, we're human, so that we probably smell terrible." "Hug him right now, Chara, or I'm going to start singing MTT commercial jingles."
That's great, Linda. I want to hear some of those.
It was a dirty trick.
I want to hear some of those.
It was a dirty trick, but the threat coupled with their already warring emotions pushed them into it. Moving quickly to keep themselves from changing their mind, Chara darted back toward him, hugging the enormous monster with both arms. Asgore froze as though completely baffled, before slowly and gently returning the embrace. They almost felt like the kid they were 100 years ago. They didn't want to let go. Their phone ringing made the decision for them, and they awkwardly broke away from Asgore to answer it. They knew who must be calling before looking, and quickly had a worried Toriel chattering in their ear. "Frisk, where are you? It is 10 minutes after you were supposed to be home. I am fine," Chara assured her. They really hoped they weren't in trouble, especially since it would be Frisk stuck with the consequences if they were. "I'm sorry, I just lost track of time." "I see," Toriel said, sounding relieved. It didn't lose that undertone of relief, even as she spoke slightly more sternly. "Please hurry home at once." "I will. See you soon, Mom." They hung up, casting a glance towards Asgore. "I should start moving. This was nice." "Indeed," he smiled awkwardly. If she says anything about being late, tell her that I kept you with a long and rambling story and that you felt too awkward to stop me. It will not be far from the truth." Chara started to protest, but Asgore, still smiling, was already shooing them away. With another word of thanks, they hurried out and made a beeline for home. "I think that's the second time he's tried to sacrifice himself for us," Frisk observed. "Yes," Chara agreed, feeling a rush of tenderness. "That is the way that he is." They made quickly for the door, but something on a table gave them pause. They hadn't noticed it coming in, but a familiar framed photograph sat framed by vases of golden flowers on either side. 2 loving boss monster parents nuzzling noses together, 2 children standing in front of them. One a cheery, fluffy boss monster child with a smile that was the very embodiment of hope. The other was a human whose face remained hidden behind a bouquet of flowers. He had brought the picture up with him. After all these years, the family they shared still meant the world to him. Family that they had broken. A loss that they had practically rubbed his nose in today. Chara's vision blurred as they picked up the portrait. Their eyes stung. It took them a while to finally put it down with trembling fingers. It took them longer to feel like they were safe from the urge to sob loudly enough that Asgore would hear them. A part of them waited for Frisk to taunt them or call them a crybaby, but it never came. Frisk waited patiently, radiating nothing but warmth. With another ice-cold stab of guilt, they realized that if the tables were reversed, Frisk couldn't have expected this kind of support from Chara. Back when Azrael was overcome with emotion, had he ever had this kind of support to lean on? Or had he only ever seen a cruel, smiling interloper calling him a crybaby? Frisk must have sensed their guilt because their voice came quiet and soothing. "He was really glad to see you," they said softly. "And I think he knew exactly who you were, too." "I can't admit it," Chara replied, sounding shaky even in their own head. "You know that. I just can't." "I'm not making you. I'm just saying that you shouldn't feel bad. Those were happy tears back there. And it's okay if you cry, too, but make sure that there are some happy tears from you, too, okay? Does that make sense?" Chara was silent, Frisk's words almost drawing out the cry that they were holding in. But they choked it back, wiping their eyes with a quiet laugh. "You make plenty of sense, Frisk. Sometimes too much." Thank you? I don't know if that was a compliment or not. Nor do I. Whatever it is, appreciate it. Amusement bled into Frisk's confusion, and they shared another soft laugh that didn't quite belong to either of them. If nothing else, even if there wasn't a way to recover all the relationships from their life long ago, at least they had this one. A half-life wasn't so bad if the other half was Frisk. Finally feeling a little bit better, their usual smile back on their face, they headed at a brisk pace for the door.
But did they ever reach the door?
Yes, they did.
Why did Chara not just tell him? Chara should have.
Well, it was just too much.
That would have been like a really cool twist for the whole
I don't
story.
understand how Kara's so antisocial. That's just not me.
Chara just is?
Kara's like extremely antisocial.
In this story or in general?
In general, and I'm just like, what?
I mean,
No. It's just the way
I don't know if
You could
I'm
think of Frisk kind of being less antisocial, because in the game, Frisk
It's going all over the place.
Yeah.
Like,
talks to
going to
everybody.
people's bedrooms.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any canonical
Whereas the only
state
time
for
you
Kara's relationships.
you see the photograph and Kara is hiding their face.
True.
And then when the only time you see Kara, it's like in blackness, all alone after everybody is dead.
Yes.
And there's not really much to go on, and their oddly formal speech is, I don't know, doesn't seem like something that an extrovert
But like in
would
all
have.
the fanfics, Kara's like extremely antisocial.
Not always. But
Yeah, like
It is
what?
a little more common. Common to assume that they were
I mean, maybe
perhaps
like truant or something.
uncertain around other monsters and
Only
stuff.
thing I can think of.
Oh, like being antisocial and truant?
I don't know.
True.
I think you could, you could certainly write a story in which Kara is friendly with lots of monsters,
It just
because,
doesn't seem to fit.
what?
Isn't she
The
I mean,
socialness
yeah,
or the antisocialness?
No, the socialness. I suppose that would work. But, having a happy Kara who has lots of friends that are monsters or humans if it's post-pacifist, that doesn't quite... I mean, maybe. But
Well, it is
Frisk
certain.
seems more like the type to get friends. Or Azrael.
Well, pacifist Frisk, as opposed to murderous Frisk,
Yeah.
depending on how you play. It's hard to make friends when you've knifed them all.
Yeah. So
But-
Sans do that.
But yes.
Sans knows everything.
Not always.
I don't know if Sans knows everything, but he certainly has.
I think
Ideas.
He certainly does have ideas of what happened in the past.
Still though, Asgore just goes straight to it.
Well, I suppose if your child comes in and they're like, if Frisk was able to detect Kara's face and personality in the mirror, then it sounds like Asgore could see that as well, especially when they were gardening together, especially if Frisk had only come over a few times before and never to garden. Plus, Asgore knows what Frisk can do, and that Frisk is an unusual child, and so maybe they thought it was possible that
Hey, somebody
Kara was there.
needs to know.
Who?
Asgore.
Yeah, of course.
Do you think Asgore knows, or was just guessing?
He probably has an idea of it, but not as much as Sans would.
He's probably just like hoping.
I don't know, because he seemed to feel like it was only a silly guess. Once Kara said no, it was as if he was just like,
He's
yeah,
just like,
right,
oh, of
that's what I
course, I
thought.
was just
It's just a
hoping.
lost hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way. Here's what he said.
But I don't
So first of all, if indeed he was completely wrong, you would expect Frisk to say, "What are you talking about? That's crazy." But instead, what Frisk says is, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm sorry. I just can't."
Yeah.
That doesn't sound.
Which is an odd thing to say. And Asgore's response is not, "Oh, well, yeah, sorry, that was a dumb question." He says, so that's how it is. Of course, here I am, spoiling everything. Hurry home then, my child. Don't let the ramblings of a tired old monster dampen a
Yeah,
good
it
day.
doesn't come Frisk there.
Well,
He doesn't know what
you probably can't draw too much from that, but I would suspect that Asgore, in fact,
he thinks something.
thinks and probably thinks Kara is in there, but just doesn't want to talk to him or come out or whatever. But he's probably still, he has not been dissuaded of the idea that Kara is there,
Yeah.
is my guess.
Well, let's hope that shows up later.
Chapter 6 will be called Your Mother.
Also, if they were working outside because the sun was going down
Oh boy. All right.
What?
Nothing at all. Sorry, I didn't say anything.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, if they were working outside and
Yes.
the sun was going down and they're
Okay.
weeding because they're weeding and it's outside, how does he control the temperature?
Well, so there's
the tropical plants that need perfect.
yeah, I mean there's probably plenty of plants that are fine. Like
A tour of the garden.
Did you know?
like all the golden flowers, for instance.
Did you
They
know
don't need
there are
climate
plants
control.
that can
Yeah.
survive in natural temperatures outside that don't have to be in a greenhouse?
Yes, I did. But he said all variety of plants and exotic plants and tropical plants. And
Those are probably in the greenhouse.
So they were outside weeding all the normal plants, probably.
how do you know there is a greenhouse?
Because it said there was.
They did it?
Didn't. Did it? Wait,
Yeah, it did.
I don't know my brain.
I don't actually remember.
I think we just made that up.
Uh-oh.
It did. It said
Probably
something
did.
about greenhouse that he made.
I feel like he just has a really big yard.
Probably.
And he got like 10 truckloads of potting
No,
soil and just...
A tour of the garden, both outside and in the greenhouse Asgore had set up.
Oh, yeah.
See?
There you go.
Okay, one greenhouse, one outside
It
area.
never said how big the greenhouse
Yeah, the
was.
greenhouse
or
can
how
be as
big.
big as you want it to be.
Yeah, but you
And
have
maybe
to
there
have
were
a
other
very
greenhouses.
expensive greenhouse with multiple sections.
He has
You're gonna have
solid
different-
gold coins as money, okay?
Plus, it was the greenhouse Asgore set up. There could have been other greenhouses that were set up by other people randomly.
The greenhouse is singular, not the greenhouse.
Maybe the house he bought came with several greenhouses.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
dear.
Well, it was identical to Toriel's house, and I doubt Toriel's came with any greenhouses.
It just said that they were similar.
It said that Nora thought that they could be
Just
in the
because
same
a house
that
is the
they were
same
in.
on the interior doesn't mean it has to be the same on
Yeah,
the
the greenhouses
exterior.
would be outside
Completely
elsewhere. Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
See? Logic.
Yep.
Okay,
We've
so
found
you're
ways to do it.
suggesting that there are more greenhouses than
No, I'm not.
Well, then why did
I'm
Asgore
not sure.
only give Kara a tour of the outside and the greenhouse he set up and not the other greenhouses?
We never said there were
What
other
are we
greenhouses.
talking
He
about
did.
again?
Daddy did.
I don't know. I've lost track of the argument.
Why can you garden so many types of plants if you, like, don't have
Wow.
all of these?
Because maybe they live in somewhere.
Never mind!
I must honestly say that
Maybe
I did not expect this to be the point of contention for the chapter.
Maybe they
Well,
live
what's
somewhere.
But then I have been a poor guesser of what
Catherine.
would generate
Maybe
comments
they
for
live
previous
somewhere.
chapters. So I shouldn't be surprised,
What are you
frankly.
guessing for
Catherine,
answers?
Kara
I
said,
didn't.
Catherine, the story said that Kara wiped sweat from her brow, but the sun was going down, which must mean it's somewhere hot, so tropical plants would do fine.
Or just like she's working
Sometimes
hard.
tropical places are not. Also, yes, they've been outside. Come on, haven't you ever been outside doing yard
Yeah, well, maybe they live somewhere hot.
Yeah,
Where
so
tropical
I can grow
plants
other
work.
plants.
So what's the point of this again?
I don't know.
Well, in hot climates.
That's why you have to like.
There's right here at the greenhouse.
Jeff,
in the greenhouse.
All right. Thank you for your horticultural comments. They have certainly enhanced this nightly reading of Chapter 5, Your Father, by KoboldKing,
Well, what did you
who's perhaps beginning to wonder if he should have spent nearly as much time talking about the plants as he did.
I mean, if
How do you know?
you
You're just
substitute with
saying
either Fluff, Azrael, or Kara telling people that they exist, any one of those would be acceptable. But preferably the first, or I mean the second.
All three, maybe?
Sure.
I'm sorry, did you say that is what you're hoping for?
I said
Fluff,
if he wants
Azrael,
the,
and Kara
if he
to...
wants the substitute
Fluff is
plant
gonna turn
descriptions
bad.
for one
Catherine,
of
the fluff is probably going to be nice and fluffy, except that it's poisonous and it's going to kill
It may be a
everyone.
little hard to do like a drop-in replacement of those things into the story.
just add Azrael.
Asgore gave
stole the
Kara
fishing
a
rod,
tour of his
remember?
garden and Azrael, who was in the back bedroom.
Yes, do it.
Eden King.
Then the two of them waved goodbye to Azrael and continued on with the gardening so that this chapter could get back on track.
Hey, this is bad. Well, no. Yes, it is.
You
Okay.
just said they waved goodbye to Azrael and continued gardening?
Yes, because we're trying to keep this chapter as
They can wave to Azrael from the window.
okay. Sure, yeah, that's
Why
great.
does Azrael make an appearance in every chapter?
Because you keep asking for him, apparently.
Well, Azrael stole his fishing rod.
Well, you are the one complaining about the amount of plants in this chapter.
Oh yeah, Flower stole
I
his
was the
fishing
one
rod.
complaining about plants.
Yes, you should,
I
you should
had-
have taken down some of that description about plants. And I said, yes, replace it with Fluff, Azrael, or Cora telling who she is.
I was only expressing the idea that if there had been fewer plants, there would have been a lot less discussion about modus ponens and modus tollens and how that relates to gardening.
Logic.
We just need Flowey. You can stick Flowey in there, and then he'll make everything
Right? She refits in a pot. Yep.
Yeah.
She's doing this, but hey, wow, that is logic. If A and B, then C, A and B, therefore C. Therefore, Flowey is in Asgore's garden.
Yeah.
I'll
And
bet,
like a baby, too.
I'll bet professional narrators don't have this problem when they're reading books on CD
I
and
bet
stuff.
professional narrators don't get a bunch of kids to listen to their stories.
That is true. That is why 99% of professional authors narrating
Yeah.
don't have children in the
Yeah, like
studio.
those people, those
next to the
weird,
microphone.
There's people on YouTube, like there's people that read all the books, if they had kids in there. that'd
Well,
be
I bet,
ridiculous.
Yeah.
if every author ever got kids to listen to their stuff first, then the books would turn out a lot differently.
Yeah, we should-
Or at least
Well,
some stories.
The length of time of the audio would certainly be twice as long. And
Well, sorry, if you want
If
to
there was,
stop
like,
the editor would have to cut out a lot
The
more.
thing is, if they got kids to like listen to a story, all of them did, and they'd be like, "What happened to the hat? The hat?
Yes.
What are you talking about? It's
What
like,
hat?
the hat they were talking about. It's like
Definitely.
When?
the start of the story. The horse half ate. What happened to the rest of it?
What?
What are we
I'm
talking
being
about?
silly.
What?
Nonsense.
Wow, I totally lost track of that comment.
That was probably like Narnia or something.
Nevertheless, it is true that I know from experience how many holes in my story get discovered in the process of reading them out loud to you.
The thing is,
Well, you insist on doing it instead of letting us read it.
And then I have the fun of trying to read and read ahead and also type in desperate little notes to myself saying, fix this part,
also,
while also trying to pretend it was all
When
all has a good explanation.
When I'm writing essays and stuff like that, and then I read over it, I try to proofread it and like if it's a speech, I have to time it, but I'm also proofreading at the same time, and I can't fix things
Nope.
while it's being timed, but then I forget where they all are.
Yes, I know that problem very well. Sometimes I just stab like a line of X's or something in hopes that I'll at least figure out what the problem was there. All right. Well, thank you for these edifying comments.
Okay, so the lesson from this chapter is that Flowey is in Asgore's garden. Also, Asgore has lots and lots of greenhouses and Asriel.